So in this video I'm going to show you how to replace the shocks in a 2017 F250. It's not too difficult, but it's kind of nice to see how it's done. Not a ton of tools required. I did have to kind of custom make a wrench. Basically I took a 21mm wrench and I ground it so that it's thinner so that it could fit and be able to lock the shock so that it didn't twist as I was undoing the top nut. Now I am replacing it Rancho shocks with Rancho shocks, so it might be a little different than if you're doing an OEM. It might be, and I'm not entirely sure, but it's pretty common, is that you would have to use a wrench or some sort of open socket that allows you to get an Allen key at the top and hold it in place while you undo the top nut. With the Rancho shocks, that's not the case. You use another wrench to lock it. It has a hex on the head that you grab with the wrench, and then you undo the nut, and that's how you do it. You can do the entire job with the truck on the ground, not having to remove any of the wheels, and I'll show you kind of some tips for accessing. So the tools that I needed: 21mm socket and or wrench at the top, plus another 21mm wrench to lock it, and then 18mm socket and a breaker bar at the bottom, a jack. I use the jack to help push the shock up into place when you're reinstalling. Then I use anti-seize and WD-40 to help kind of break things loose and then make sure they don't get seized up again when you have to replace them in the future. Just as a quick side note for the truck, if you start going over bumps and the wheel starts shaking, it might be a good indicator that you have to replace the shocks, and or the steering damper, which I have another video on how to do that. If it doesn't quite solve the problem, you just want to check to see if any of your steering linkage is loose. So that's just another thing. If you know your shocks are old and you're starting to get that vibration, probably replace the shocks would be a good first step. And then if it's still improved but not completely eliminated, then check for other loose steering components. All right, let's get to it. All right, so first step, move the wheels hard to the, depending on which side of the vehicle you're working on. You turn them hard one way or the other so you have access. Now the shocks that are in here are Rancho shocks, and so they have a nut down here that helps you lock, you hold it while you undo the top nut there. Now I've already kind of started, and without having to remove the wheel liner, you can access this completely from the wheel arch here. Now on the other side I did it completely like this with just the wrenches, but on the driver's side as well, you can actually access this from the top if you have enough extensions, and you want to use like a 1/2 inch impact or something like that. The nice thing is that because this gets locked by a wrench, it's going to allow you to use an impact on one side. Now this one's just really stiff, so I'm actually going to try to do that from the top. So I have a step ladder here. You don't have to move anything but right there it is. You can see it right dead center. So it's a fairly straight shot. You will need a little bit of a wobble head or something. So this is how I'm getting in there. So I have a U-joint. So this, if it was straight up, you'd be up into these clips here. So that's where having the U-joint is handy. Now that I have the top one off, it's just a simple nut right here. I sprayed it with some WD-40 already. I don't expect it to be rusty. It looks a little rusty on the outside there, but I don't expect it to be like seized with rust. Now, this is the nice thing about turning the wheel sideways. You can now bring in a breaker bar. I don't think I can get my impact in there quite. So just using the breaker bar, break it loose, and then switching over to hand ratchet and taking out the rest of the way. All right, for the new shock, you get a boot, you get this hardware kit, you get a zip tie. So basically the boot slips over this way and will actually kind of lock in on this collar right there. And then the zip tie is to hold it down here. And Then you get one of these washers on, then one of the rubber bushings, and then we start the install. Alright, so here the shock is kind of assembled. So I got the boot on. I put the spacer in, one of the rubber bushings. Now we're going to install this into the truck. This other bushing is going to go on top. Then this like that, and then this nut. Now the one annoying thing is that, originally it was a 21 millimeter nut at the top. Now it's a 19 millimeter lock nut. I'm also going to use this jack here to help push the shock up and seat it, because otherwise, so I can get enough thread here to start screwing this the nut on. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so we got it in. I think there should be enough there. You can see I just have the jack kind of holding up the shock. Now let's see if we have enough thread sticking up. Yep, I think we're gonna have enough threads there. All right, to get started. Yep, just enough. Yep, just enough threads to get started. So this is a lock nut, so the locking side, which is the dome side, goes up. All right, tighten down the nut pretty good till this is pretty well squished. You may have to go in after driving a little bit and tighten it down a bit more as this collapses. Now this is where I'm using the jack. I'm using a socket to help push the shock up and into the bracket. Now I just kind of roll it forward a little bit, and then it'll get it into place, and then slip the bolt in, wiggle it around, and that's pretty much it. And then I'll straighten this out and throw the zip tie on to hold it in place. All right, it's installed. I did add anti-seize down here on the nut, just so that if I have to take it off, I still have to put the zip tie here. And then they do come with stickers if you want to put the sticker on the shock. That's up to you. I'm just going to leave it off. I don't really care that much. Well, I hope you found the video helpful, and thank you very much.